Okay, so hello, just a quick build video for my boy Andy Butcher because he claims to not be having the most pleasant of experience with the Dead Rabbit RTA that you can see me unpacking here. Quick plug for Dreads Mango, buy it, it's great. So I'm just gonna do a build and let you watch. Hopefully pick up some tips, Andy, and are able to get as much enjoyment out of your Dead Rabbit RTA as I did out of mine. So what you can see me doing now is just trimming the legs of the coils I have. I'm using my coily tool, measured out at 6mm leg length. Don't know if that's the optimum for the Dead Rabbit RTA. Haven't built one in a while, but I can already tell you it works out okay. So that's the first coil done. Just undoing all the screws so I can pop the coil into place now. Can be a little bit fiddly, but the first one's the easy one actually. Second one's a bit difficult. Doing the same thing again, 6mm leg length as per the coily tool. Clipping off the ends. If I remember correctly, I missed a little bit. Yeah, caught my finger on it. So I had to go back in and trim that down just that little bit more. I think at 6mm the legs do come out the bottom of the post just a little bit anyway, but not enough to cause any problem. This is probably the hardest part of the whole build of these decks, is making sure the second coil is at the same height as the first coil and making sure it doesn't move when you tighten it down, because sometimes the legs can move up or down a touch when you tighten them down. So you can see me sort of clamping it in place with my fingers and then tighten it down just to make sure I don't feel it move up or down enough for me to want to loosen it and try again. Just checking things over, make sure I'm happy. So these are my Coil Master coil jigs. Each one of those rods is a different diameter. You can wrap your coil around. I've got the 3mm diameter rod there. Just gonna position the coil, make sure it's nice, and I was gonna say horizontal, but that's what I've already done. Just make sure it's nice and straight across the deck. So this is actually the hard part I mentioned earlier with the second coil, making sure it's at the right height. And keeping it in place at the right height while you tighten it down. Got a little bit ahead of myself earlier when I mentioned that, so enjoy watching me struggle with this a little bit. Got him in place, tighten him down, get the coil jig in there again, straighten it out. And what you're going to see me doing in a second is sort of moving the coils closer together because I want them directly underneath the drip tip where the vapor is going to be coming through into my lovely mouth. So the closer they can be together, the better. But obviously you don't want them touching because that's gonna short. That's not gonna be a good time. So I'm happy with the placement now. Time to do some pre-firing or dry firing or whatever you call it. I'm just gonna heat them up a little bit, make sure the firing okay. Yeah, to speed up this process. I did take my time with this build, Andy. It doesn't normally take this long, don't worry. But I thought I'm going to slow it right down and make sure everything is beautiful for the purposes of this little video for you, bro. So you're welcome. Buy my juices, thank you. This is the fun bit. Dry firing, making sure they're glowing evenly, getting all the hot spots out. So you can't really see on the camera because it's not, super zoomed in. But if you ever see anything that looks like little cracks of fire or lightning bolts in the coil, give them a quick strum with ceramic tipped or any sort of non-conductive material. I've got ceramic tip tweezers there. Don't use your metal tip tweezers when dry firing and strumming. But you want to keep strumming and squeezing them together and stuff just until they glow evenly from the inside of the coil outwards, and each coil is glowing at the same rate, or either coil is glowing at the same rate as the other one. And I'm getting there, but I'm very anal with this sort of stuff, so it does look like it's fit for purpose now. Good. Get my cotton gods out. This is my cotton of choice. It should be everybody's cotton of choice. Little to no break-in on it. It's wonderful stuff. And there's some TGWD fresh blackcurrant, back to the Cotton Gods. So that's one full strip I've taken out of the packet there. And I would say it's just under half. So I'd say just over a third, just under a half of a full strip that actually, no, I'd say it's a third. Just a slither over a third of a strip of the Cotton Gods cotton that you get out there. I've taken a little bit more off. So you end up with about a third or just over after stripping off that little bit. Pinch the end, twist it through so it's easier to thread. Let's take a little bit more off. So again, like I say, you ended up with around a third, hovering around a third of the total strip of cotton is what I use. But I do fluff it out quite a lot, as you saw. And you will see again in a moment, because I think I'll do the next one quite a bit more just to compensate for my lack of fluffing on the first one. Yeah, watch the fluffage. Lots and lots of. The more you can do fluffing, which you're going to see me do in a moment with this one, the better I feel with the dead rabbit. Because the wicking channels that the cotton sits in are quite big, and you don't really want more than maybe a 3.5 mil at a push in a diameter coil in there. But ideally you'd want more than that amount's worth of, or that diameter's worth of cotton to go in those channels. But the fluffing out sort of expands it and helps it fill spaces better. But obviously it passes through the coil nice and easily because it can compress. And voila, ready for some snippage and some combing and all that good stuff. So here I am with my snips. I don't use scissors because I'm left-handed and they don't work too well for me, so I get some snips. And I go from the coil outwards, combing out the excess cotton. Just want to thin it out just a little bit. Thin it out more towards the end of the strip of cotton that you've got through the coil. But you do want to sort of be lightly dragging it out from as close to the coil as possible. Same on the other side. Don't worry too much. It looks like a lot of cotton. I know I'm wasteful, but there's still going to be enough in there to complete the build. But nice and fluffy and airy is the goal with the Dead Rabbit RTA, I found. The V1 at least anyway. Not tried the V2 myself yet. Just marking out where I'm going to cut the cotton to. But the first one doesn't really matter, because if you cut it too short, you can just pull it through. And if you cut it too long, you can just cut it down some more, I suppose, can't you? So there I am, just teasing and whatnot. One tip I would say is the underside of the cotton. Cut that ever so slightly shorter than the top side of the cotton. And that's because you're going to be pushing it down into the channels soon where it wicks, and the distance from the coil for the cotton on the underside would be shorter than the distance with the coil on the top. Basic science and maths, or basic stuff that. So get my flathead screwdriver just to poke it in nicely. I would normally use the snips, but they take up too much space and I want you to see what I'm doing. And make sure, as you see me there doing there, there's none around the front of the posts. You want to make sure it's going down the sides, it's not going over the screws at all, so you're not wasting any cotton that could be tucked into those channels. Slightly difficult bit here, or slightly more difficult than the other side, is if you don't get the length right here, you cut it too short, then you're gonna have to start the whole wicking process again, because you wouldn't have enough cotton to pull it through, unless you've left the first side a bit long, which hopefully you haven't. Again, just get your device, whatever you're using, your tool rather, just to poke it in. And you'll notice, or I don't know if you can see, but you don't want to poke the cotton through so it's touching the deck underneath. I think this side, if I remember correctly, was a little bit too long, and I took it out and cut it again. Yeah, you don't want the cotton to be touching the deck. You want the juice to be able to flow underneath the cotton once it's in the channels, obviously, and then soak up. You don't want it to be meeting the cotton on the base of the deck. That could cause some sort of slowing down of the wicking, which I do believe he was having an issue with. Andy said it's like dry hitting a little bit, not as flavoursome as you would like. So get your TZWD Dreads Mango, because that's the best juice to use in this tank. And soak up the cotton. I'm not actually going to be vaping this myself. It's going straight back in the box, so I didn't put any on. But yeah, you want to wick up or juice up your dry cotton. And then watch me struggle to put the top half of the tank back on. Have a nice look down the middle. You can't quite see in the camera, but you want the coils to be directly sort of underneath that hole in the middle. And this is where you'd screw it onto your atomizer, fill it up with juice, and vape it. But I put mine away because that's what I do. Hopefully, if you found that very informational, and you enjoy my making up words. And Andy, any other problems, mate, give us a shout. Peace.